Welcome to the Primo's Musings podcast.
All right, good evening. I do have Steve Rewenko here. How are you doing, Steve?
Good. How are you, Sri?
All right, so we're fresh, I think 24 hours since Dan Hurley decided not to go to the Lakers and decided to stay at UConn. I'm going to set the stage on what happened over the last 5-6 days, and then I'll let you chime in terms of what are the decisions that are what really led Dan Hurley to stay back at UConn. So maybe last week, I think the Lakers, there was a flurry of activity with the Lakers offering to fly out Dan Hurley to LA to make him the next head coach of the Lakers. A lot of information came out saying that it was going to be 100 million for 8 years. But Hurley did fly out to LA, met with the LA top brass, and then yesterday, to the much delight of the UConn fans, decided to stay back at UConn and wanted to go for a three-peat. Obviously, his UConn contract will be decided soon. From what I heard, I did see an article that Ned Lamont, the governor, said that they are trying to work out a deal to pay him probably one of the top, highest, most paid coaches. So I'm going to give you the floor, Steve, in terms of kind of your analysis on what made Dan, first, go to the Lakers, 2, stay back at UConn, and 3, what does it do to UConn going forward, and then the Lakers. So we'll probably mostly focus on UConn because we're UConn fans. I mean, not that I care about the Lakers, but we'll stay there. Go ahead, Steve, you got the floor.
So I guess when the news broke that the Lakers were interested in him, it was something he obviously had to explore. I mean, Lakers are obviously a name brand in the NBA. Them and the Celtics are obviously the two biggest franchises. So he owed it to himself to at least check it out. We all were hoping here back in Connecticut that he was going to stay. Yeah, I think a lot of people view his temperament, as a college coach, but it's been widely known that he's said that he would like to test the NBA waters at some point in his career. So the question was it now, right? I think UConn, Connecticut fans had something working in their to their advantage. Was one, the chase for the three-peat obviously was a big thing. Secondly, I think he's still, in his mind, probably has some unfinished business, right? He's still early on in his UConn career, 6 years in. He's building what could be, quite honestly, a dynasty. I mean, the way NIL is, the way unlimited transfers work now in the college system, it's not like the old days where you have to kind of start anew and start recruiting, building your program. They're going to reload, as they quote unquote say, and they're going to do it not with freshmen, high caliber freshmen. They're going to do it with high caliber upperclassmen, and you see it already happening this year. Obviously, they lost a lot of talent, with Klingon and Castle and Newton all going, and Spencer, obviously, but. I think in this new wave, I think UConn's going to be in the hunt for the Final Four every year, if not a national championship. So at 51 years old, I think the opportunity probably was a little earlier than what Hurley wanted, and I personally think he's more of an East Coast guy. I could see him down the line, 5-7 years or so, maybe 10, taking maybe a Knicks job or a Nets job. Probably the Knicks would be the ultimate position. Another legendary franchise.
Right.
So that's kind of my take. And I heard on the radio today someone say, Joe D actually was on WTIC. He thought that Caravan coming back played, a small role in there. The fact that Hurley probably had tried to sway him to come back this year. So maybe he didn't want to let him down as well. So that probably played a small role.
Yeah, I think that's good info, Steve. Here's what I think happened. You're right. I mean, it was the Lakers calling, uh, and like you said, one of the storied franchises in the NBA. Although um, the only championship that the Lakers won was, I think, during the pandemic year when they didn't have any fans in the stadium, and they won that. But other than that, when I look at Los Angeles Lakers, and I can relate to that being a Patriots fan on the East Coast,
Hmm.
that it is very difficult for a franchise, no matter whatever storied franchise they are, whether it's and I think I'm going to upset your brother Mark here, whether the Dallas Cowboys or the Patriots or even the Lakers, going back up on top is going to be really tough. Like even though they have LeBron and Anthony
Hmm.
Davis, if you look at, I think Hurley probably that kind of weighed in his decision. He went to LA to check it out. He just still had to, like you said, right? I mean, it's still the LA Lakers. However, when you look at the roster, it's not like he can recruit anybody like in college.
Right.
NBA, you're limited by. I mean, of course, you can still make a super team like LeBron did with the Miami Heat many years ago, but end of the day, it's going to be that he had to coach players who make more than him, players who probably have a more sway with the management
Sure.
than he does. And I'm not sure if he really thought through like what would happen if the Lakers had a losing season, what would happen, and things like that. But I do think that a lot of the positive factors, being on the East Coast, his wife, again, being
Yep.
on the East Coast, his parents
Parents.
coming to each and every UConn game, being on the
Hmm.
East Coast. His son, I heard, I think who works in Boston, I think he's on the East Coast. Um, so a lot of those factors definitely kept him here, and I think it's very good for, to me, it's very good for college basketball.
Sure.
As you know, the Big East is not in a Power Five conference,
Yep.
so for the Big East to actually have Hurley, and then you have Patino here, I think it makes great sense for him to stay back. And I think UConn's going to make his salary higher. I think it was like 6 years, 36, but I think it's going to be 6 years, 50 or something. But when you compare the 6 years, 70 million that the Lakers threw at him, when you compare the tax bracket scenario,
Sure.
of course, Connecticut has got high taxes too, but I'm pretty sure that he could be fine here with smaller amount of money. So your thoughts on what it does to UConn? I mean, I know you mentioned that. I mean, again, there's no guarantees. Going for a three-peat is not easy, but
Right.
puts UConn in a very good spot. So the question to you is that, I mean, of course, where does UConn go from here? And then, uh, do you think they have the talent to win it the third time?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, they're in the top five. I hear. It remains to be seen. I mean, do they have? They had a very good team last year. Guys where all starters probably could put up 20 points in one particular game, and you wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I'm sure each of them had a 20-point game throughout the year. I'm not sure we're going to see that this year. So it's we don't really know all the players. How is the kid from St. Mary's? Is he going to be as good as they're saying? They got the top 10 player coming in, and plus the guard from I think it's Pennsylvania who's supposed to be really good. Noel Oral.
Liam,
Um,
you got Liam. Are you talking about the
no, I thought about the other guard, the one is it from Philadelphia area? Who's really good. Uh, Ahmad Norrell, I believe. I think he's like a top 40.
top four, and then you got the transfer from Michigan.
Yes, Reed.
Uh, you
Who's a
got Reed from
6'10".
Michigan, and
Yeah,
then you got the St. Mary's kid. Obviously, Caravan coming back, and you still have um, the
Samson
other
Johnson.
freshmen still here. I mean, from
Yeah,
last year. I mean,
sure, sure.
Solo Ball is still here.
Yep.
Um,
Stewart.
Ross, and then and like I said, you still have Samson Johnson. I mean, so
It's
and I think they did recruit one center. So I think the roster is there, like you said, right? That's a great
Jalen
thing
Stewart
about.
is going to be a big player for them this year.
Oh, you think so?
Oh yeah, I think he's going to be. He's really going to be a very good player. He's very athletic. He's very long. I mean, you saw his potential. He could shoot the ball last year. Um, one thing I was surprised with the Lakers, they said they threw everything at Hurley. You kept hearing 5 years, 100, but the offer only came in at 6 for 70. So when you break it down, I think I heard that 11.6 would have been the average annual salary. That would only put him top five. And then, like you're saying, what happens after 2-3 years? Things with LeBron, and you got the whole Bronny thing that could have complicated the situation. He could give up. What we just talked about at UConn. I really think over the next 10 years, they have really an opportunity to be competing for the Final Four every year. Particularly the way NIL and the unlimited transfer is set up for college basketball. Who knows what's going to happen with the conferences? But and the coaching is phenomenal. I mean, let's face it. I mean, they didn't lose anyone from the coaching staff. So you got to put Hurley's coaching ability right now. It's funny. I heard someone say today they lost that game. What was it? That first round game in the tournament a couple years ago, and
New
almost
Mex-
like
was it New Mexico State?
New Mexico State, and he really changed his brand, his strategy, where we got to win more offensive players as opposed to defense. We can't grind out defense, and almost like a light went off in his head, a switch went off. I mean, they just haven't looked back. I mean, they really, the last two seasons have been phenomenal. He won 12 tournament games in a row by what? I think double figures.
Double digits, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did hear. I do hear a couple of other UConn podcasts. One is Locked On UConn, and then there's one is Field of 68 where Rob Doster and those guys chime in. And one of the things that Rob was mentioning, was about. I mean, forget the loss to New Mexico State. There was another last year. There was a period they lost 6 out of 7 games, and at the time, I think he had Andrea Hurley on, and she apparently said, and this was right after the championship. He said he was in a pretty dark place because he wasn't sure whether he had a loss to New Mexico State. Then they went on a 6 of 7. They lose. They started undefeated, and then they lost many games in the Big East, and then they bounced back. In the Big East, they didn't win the Big East, obviously, last year, and then they went on a big run in the championship last year, and then what they did this year is just phenomenal. So going to the next year, and again, I mean, you're winning right now. This is like winning championships in basketball is very difficult, and for somehow he's actually mastered that, especially with the NIL, with different players. It's not like Florida. I mean, nothing against Florida and Billy Donovan. They didn't have the core group of players. I think they had Al Horford and then Noah and all these guys who are still there. I mean, I think especially those are the two key players that they had in Florida roster. But now, they pretty much lost Hawkins and Sonogo last year. Losing Castle and Tristan Newton, and then Kling. So you're going, and this is going. That's why
and
I'm not sure it's going to be each and every game. You're going to sit and watch what type of UConn team is going to show up, and it's going to be fun to watch the season like we did last year. So that's where I see, like, I mean, I'm sure they'll go through some growing pains because the freshmen have to click. I mean, the good thing is that they do have Caravan, who's veteran presence, and you also have Hassan Diarra from a point guard standpoint. Great defensive guy. He came really strong, even on the offensive side of things. Excellent rebounder too. But then the new players will have to learn how to gel with the second-year players as well as the senior players. And I'm sure that last year, one of the things that we're talking about was you had Hurley coaching at the sideline, but you had a Cam Spencer, so aka another Hurley, on the court.
Right.
Caravan is not much of a talker. So the question to you is that who is going to be the leader of the squad? And I think it's Caravan. But again, to you, what do you think? Who thinks is the leader of the squad? And would he be more vocal like Spencer if the time
Yeah, and
comes?
I can see Diarra as well. I think they're both going to be rocks of the starting five. You know, they're going to be. You know, maybe Diarra gets supplanted as a 6 man later in the year, but I could definitely see him starting the first half of the year. And I think chemistry will be the big thing. You'll see um, Hurley working with different lineups in particularly November, December, and then probably somewhere in January he'll figure out a rotation and kind of stick with it. But it's going to be a very competitive environment, you know, these first 2 months of the year, and you're going to see. I think I was reading you have like 10 guys that can really get are in play for some significant minutes on the team. When you mentioned you were talking Johnson, I could see starting out probably like Diarra, Caravan. I don't know if they start Johnson or Reed. I actually read somewhere maybe Johnson would come off the bench again
Mhm.
because I think Reed is a 2 year starter. Reed actually, believe it or not, was recruited out of high school and higher than Klingon. He was
Interesting.
rated, yeah, he was rated higher than Klingon coming out of high school. I think Stewart definitely will be a starter, and probably the kid from St. Mary's will be the other starter. So you got Diarra, um, Stewart, Caravan, the kid from St. Mary's, and Reed, and the other, and maybe Solomon Ball. I mean, he played pretty well early in the year when he played. You know, he just got phased out a little bit in the rotation. And then you got Ross too, who was supposed to be a deadly shooter. So those guys are going to put up some significant minutes, and then you throw in the freshmen after that. They have
Hmm.
some. So they again, I think there's gonna be some competition for those minutes. It's gonna be fun. I think as a UConn fan, early the first couple months of the year to see how these guys and how the competition goes and who comes out on top. Because I think come January, like I said, I think you'll see pretty pretty much an established rotation.
Yeah.
I don't know
And
if do you
then
agree
once
with
the Big
that.
East, yeah, go ahead.
Do you agree with that though? You think come January, once Hurley gets it set, you know, he'll probably stick with the rotation. You know, maybe make minor tweaks here and there depending on injuries.
And that's what they did this year, right? I
Yeah,
mean, when you look at it, obviously the key is when the Big East um, the season starts, right? When the first few games, like you said, right, it's going to be, they're going to be playing some easy games, obviously,
hmm,
right? And then come Big East time, that's when you'll see the roster being shaped up.
sure.
I mean, again,
Yep.
the one great thing about what UConn did this year was that depending on the game and how the flow of the game, Hurley was able to manage. He managed to switch. He went to a smaller lineup, and then he went to a bigger lineup. If Klingon was in like foul trouble, remember there was a time when Klingon didn't even play, I think due to injury, and then Hurley was experimenting with. He would get Samson Johnson in very quick, and then he would go with a much smaller lineup. So I think the good thing about UConn is that they have a lot of options in terms of lineups. They can
Sure.
switch the lineups based on the flow of the game and the opponent that they're going to play. I mean, but again, it's not going to be easy this year because with the transfer portal, I mean, I know Indiana, Alabama, Baylor, Duke. I mean, Duke got Cooper Flag. So all these teams will have something to say about UConn trying to go for a three-peat. Obviously, the chances for UConn for a three-peat went up with Hurley staying, but I don't think it's going to be easy. And even this year, it was not easy. I mean, if you know, uh, even the Big East was a battle. I mean, even though they did go through the Big East pretty fast, but I think if you look at it, Creighton always gave them trouble, and that's one
Yeah.
thing that Hurley has. I think he's actually 0 for 4 in on the road in Creighton. I don't think he has won on the road, so that could be another challenge for him, maybe.
Yeah.
I have to check this.
But
I have to check the stats, but um,
did,
but I mean that's where we are, Steve. So
let
it,
me ask you a question, Tree. Did you hear that Coach K was an integral part in getting Hurley over to the Lakers for an interview?
so interesting that you asked that question because 20 years back, Coach K actually rejected the Lakers' offer.
Yeah.
So I think I've seen both sides of it.
He's a
Where
paid consultant now by the
yeah, he's a
Lakers.
consultant. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So there could be a yeah. There I could put some
Uh,
truth to that. The fact that Coach K may have asked him to go and check it out, maybe at least.
or he
Uh,
recommended him. But the
yes.
question I have is, it's twofold. Is he doing it to help Duke and hurt UConn, for one? And is he doing it to maybe protect his legacy? Does he see what Hurley can become at UConn? He's got 2 championships already. Which Coach K have 5, and you wonder if it's a two-prong, because he recommended Hurley over his own JJ Redick, who I think might be a front runner now from what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
So
that's a very interesting question, Steve, because I would again, I know it's a great conspiracy theory to talk about, right?
I
Because
don't think it's conspiracy. I think he definitely recommended. I'm adding some conspiracies in, but there was an article saying that he had recommended Hurley because they were close. They knew each other.
okay,
Yeah,
I mean, it could be. I mean,
yeah,
you can never put past any of these guys because I do think that ego matters,
sure.
um, and I think if Hurley wins the third one, it now puts him on the same. I wouldn't. No one gets to Wooden, right? I mean, Wooden is way up there,
Yeah,
but in this era of NIL, in this era of free agency, um, if Hurley can win the third one, that'll definitely put him one notch below uh, Wooden. I mean, because it's never been done
yeah,
until back in the
right,
'60s, with when Wooden had some of the greatest basketball players who would go out as like the top players, right? So
right.
there you go.
No, and um, yeah,
Go
no,
ahead.
he'll definitely be
Looks
in
like we're
his.
having some.
I don't know
Go ahead.
where you, if you won a third, and we're obviously it's a long ways to go. I guess
I
it
think
remains to
I'm
see where we would
getting a
put him.
little
Oh,
thing in your thing, but anyway, I think when I look at where we are. Oh, you're back again. Looks
okay,
like
I'm
it.
back. Yeah,
Yeah, that's good. All
it's
right.
funny.
Yeah,
I didn't lose you, but
you didn't lose
I
me.
was gonna
Okay.
say it's kind of we're still obviously a ways away um, from a three-peat, and we're a long way to go. But if he wins a three-peat, it's definitely gonna put him in the top 10, I think, of all time.
Hmm.
You know?
Yeah, I do think so. I do think so. I mean, we'll put him in maybe right below it. That's what I was just saying. But
Yeah,
there you go, man. All right. I think this is great. I mean, we had to react to this because I mean, who would have thought that in June, almost mid-June, we're talking UConn basketball again?
yeah,
Because you now talk about baseball, you talk about the NBA playoffs are going in full flow, the NHL playoffs are going, and here we're talking UConn, and he's definitely changed the news cycle. And there's one more thing I wanted to ask you because talking about theories, there was I wouldn't say an article that someone said that Hurley may have used the Lakers as a leverage to get more dollars from UConn. What do you think about that?
yeah. I'm sure there's a small piece to that as well. I don't think it's a large component of it, but I'm sure that it was a small factor. I mean, we're all human. We all want to
Yeah.
make as much money as we can. But I did hear he probably. I think I heard that Bill Self makes $10 million a year, and he probably would not break that record or become number one. Um, and I don't know how the whole NIL plays into it, where
Mm.
if that's a university expense or if that
Yeah,
is primarily a
I think so
sponsorships.
too.
So I
Yeah.
mean, hey, if he gets up to close to $10 million, that's pretty good. I don't remember what his initial contract was with UConn, probably
Yeah.
2 or 3.
Yep.
Not bad from a guy from high school to I can't remember the school. Wagner, URI, UConn, Lakers. And I was thinking too. Remember the first game they played in the tournament last year? It was against Patino's team, and
they played Iona last
and
year.
They were down one, right? A half.
They were down by 1. Yes, you're right.
I remember I turned to some of the guys I was watching the game with, and we actually thought it was 50-50 we were going to win that game or not. That's how precarious the situation was at that time. And really since then, that second half of that Iona game, they've been lights out.
Yep. That's true. All right, Steve.
All right,
this is great. Just hold on 1 second before I hit the...
my buddy Daniel Jones he's playing, and he's going to be first day of training camp, so I'm looking forward to that.
All right, you're ready for the Giants. Well, you should be like happy with the Yankees anyway. So
yeah, Yanks are doing well too. I'll watch them right now.
Maybe the Celtics.
Yeah, somewhat the Celtics too. Yeah.
All right, enjoy. And let me just stop the recording right now. Thanks again, Steve, and then good night, and then hang on a bit.
Okay.
Thank you for listening. Primo will be back soon.